Hi there. Welcome back to the Real Film Chronicles podcast. As always, I'm Nathan.
And I'm Brian.
And in this week's very special episode, we're going to be counting down our top 10 films from 2024.
The annual countdown, the top 10 episode. I always get a little nervous for these ones. Assembling the list is a little bit stressful at times. I feel like we do throw out a few disclaimers before we head into the list, but it's fun. It's fun to go in, and it can be fun to catch up on like 2024 movies that maybe we missed out on, just see if we can squeeze them into the list. What kind of disclaimers do we give here? Obviously, it's highly subjective. Don't burn us alive here for some of these picks. For myself, I find some of my criteria for making the list might not be that the movie is really, really great. You know, it's not like an Oscar nom or an awards film per se. It's more like, can I rewatch this multiple times? Is this going to, I'm almost like trying to predict the future. Am I going to be watching this for the 10th time in 10 years from now? You know what I mean?
It's just a cult classic in the making.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I've been pretty good so far, but I want to go back on some of my old top 10 lists and see how wrong I was on some of those entries. But hopefully I've got a good set of 10 movies here.
Yeah. Also, standard disclaimer, we're not professional movie critics. We have day jobs, so we're just not going to see the same number of movies that, someone working for the New York Times whose day job it is to go and watch movies and review them, or, siscleaner.com. Take it for what it is, based on two average people, watching, I don't know, is an average number of new movies. I think I hit like 60, 65 new movies, and you were like 90, 95, somewhere in that.
It was a lot
range last year,
honestly. And I don't know what the average like moviegoer sees, but like I've talked to some friends, and they probably see 40, 50 movies a year total, right? So to get up to like 60 brand new movies in one year, I hit about 350 movies watched last year altogether.
Okay.
And about 90, my list was 94 deep for 2024, and I was still watching them.
Between 60 and 90, and there's hundreds of new movies coming out every year, so there's going to be ones we just didn't get around to seeing. So it's
tough.
Yeah, so take it for what it is. We're not professional film critics. This is just two people who love movies talking about some of the movies they love from the past year.
We got to cover our bases so we don't get any hate mail here. But
yeah, exactly.
If you want to write in and tell us about your top 10, I would love to hear people's top 10s. Create a list on Letterboxd and send it over. I'd like to have a peek.
It's so great to see those lists, because there's so many movies out there, and I'm looking up people's top 10s, and there's movies I didn't hear about, and I'll send me down kind of rabbit hole, this director, this genre, or this this country's movies, and I'm always looking for those opportunities. So yeah, any feedback is always great.
Without a doubt. So let's get into the list. We'll alternate. We'll start at number 10. We'll go back and forth right up till we hit number 1. I think I want to go first with my number 10. That way you unveil your number 1 at the very, very last.
Okay. No pressure.
You have the last word on that.
All right, let's hear number 10, Brian.
Number 10 is a movie called It's What's Inside, directed by Greg Jardin.
Good pick.
I think the general concept of this film was that it's a group of friends who get together one night. One of them pulls out this piece of technology, like this sci-fi device that you connect everyone to with a wire. I love how it's kind of like nondescript. It's not like super technical. It's just everyone's connected to the machine, and they swap bodies. And there's almost like a hit a random button, and everyone goes into a random body. And the game is you have to try and guess who is in what person's body.
Yeah.
And I think it's that sci-fi element that really hooks me in. And when I'm looking at all these movies that are like, some of them in my top 10 is like, oh yeah, I can see the sci-fi undercurrent here. But I love it. It reminded me of Talk to Me from a couple years ago, where it's like, oh, here's this, in that case, like a supernatural hand that can invite the dead into your body for a minute. And we don't need to get caught up in the details of how the hand works. We know it's there. The movie makes some rules about it. Boom, it sticks to those rules. And I think It's What's Inside kind of did the same thing.
Yeah.
But really what set this movie apart for me from a lot of the other ones this year I had a lot of fun watching it. There seemed to be like a really good energy going on throughout the movie. It's a fairly young cast. They seem to be having a lot of fun. There's some good drama and a lot of comedy throughout the film. Yeah, it's what's inside. Pretty solid, I think.
No, great little movie. Great little movie. This nice little, I love that. It's like the high concept, kind of low budget sci-fi movie. Machine, kind of, very simple, kind of analog. But it's just about to get to that concept of what happens when a bunch of friends, close group of friends, they swap bodies, and there's all these kind of secrets and stuff. Even like that's always a fascinating concept, right? Like, how well do you really know your friends, kind of thing, right? That's the real question of it. Not can you. What are the scientific logistics involved in swapping bodies? But like, no, how well do you really know your friends and what's going on, right? So it's a good pick.
What is your number 10?
My number 10, I think I don't know. It's a little bit of a cheat, I guess, because I think this was originally released in 2022. I think it had a wide release in 2024. So yeah, I might be cheating a little bit here. But it's a comedy as well. I want to represent some comedy on here. I just watched this recently. But Hundreds of Beavers.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen this yet.
I literally just watched it like 3 days ago.
Yeah. Watched it this past week, and I was debating. There's a couple other movies that I really wanted to put on the list, and I was like, does Hundreds of Beavers deserve to be on there over some of these other ones? And I'm just looking at purely from like the user experience, the audience experience. I was laughing the whole time. It's mostly silent movie, black and white.
Yeah.
Ultra low budget, like $150K, I think, was the budget for this movie.
Wow.
And you see that it's like very kind of stylized movie. This guy who becomes a fur trapper back in the olden days, and you see, like, on a surface level, it's like, yeah, it's a silly kind of comedy, but you're looking at shades of, you see inspiration obviously from Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, and Three Stooges and the kind of slapstick comedy. And you see elements other people pointed out, like elements of kind of that video game progression of like, you kind of leveling up within the game world. Overall, I was at the beginning, I was kind of scratching my head. I was like, what's going on? What is happening here? But then as it kind of picked up and I allowed myself to be pulled into this world, and there was like this strange juxtaposition of the modern and the traditional, right? Of, there's one scene where the merchant's daughter, he's like kind of having like a clandestine relationship with her, like courtship with her. At one point, like she shows her ankle, and that's like he's getting all hot and bothered. And then, which is like the joke of like how ideas of kind of modesty and titillation have changed over the years. And then like the next scene, she's like she's on a strip pole doing a dance. It was like this weird kind of juxtaposition of the modern and the kind of traditional. And it was like just from pure joy of cinema, of watching this and just being completely and utterly entertained from beginning to end without hardly using any words, and just the chutzpah of these filmmakers who $150K, which is nothing when it comes to filmmaking, and they make all these and they use it to their advantage. Like, this is what I love about filmmaking, ingenuity at its finest, when you don't have the resources and it forces you to kind of rethink, well, how can I kind of change my vision to match the resources I have? And it forces people, the best filmmakers, to get really, really creative and inventive. And I think you talk about rewatchability, like Hundreds of Beavers is one. That's one of the ones, like, if somebody comes over to my house and is like, oh, what should we watch tonight? It's like, oh, what should something new or different. It's like, I got a great movie for you to show you. It's something I'm going to be proud to, like, I'm the guy who introduced this to other people. Really, really cool little movie. And I noticed I didn't have a lot of comedies, so that covers like kind of the comedy section of my top 10 as well. But yeah, Hundreds of Beavers. If you haven't seen it, keep an open mind and give it a shot.
Without a doubt, like, it is a movie that is a movie. Like, it does so much with the format. You just have to watch it just to experience it and see this is what cinema is all about, is like doing innovative things on screen and in the medium. Like, so I didn't realize the budget was so low, but like, man, it goes so far with this, like the style of the film, and all the jokes and the gags, like everything works so well.
There was also an element of Looney Tunes in it, in terms of what was going on the screen and some of the kind of cartoon logic and things like. But things like the low budget thing was like they made it work, where like all the animals were people. They played it up whereas people in these like mascot style suits for like the raccoons and the
Yeah.
and the beavers, the hundreds of beavers were all guys in suits, guys and girls in suits. Completely and utterly ridiculous, but also at the same time it was charming and heartfelt and captivating. Yeah, check it out for sure. All right, number 9, Brian.
My number nine is Heretic, starring Hugh Grant.
Okay.
This one, I almost feel like a disclaimer where it's like there's a lot of movies that were like hovering around 10 through 20 or 30 that it's like probably could have been put in here, but I decided Heretic because I had a good time at the theater with this. I was fully engrossed with it the entire time. It was just a really good film that had like a level of tension from the very beginning and like I think held it throughout. It may falter a little bit at the end. I don't know if that's even a criticism or just like it's something to like bring it down a star or something. But like Hugh Grant in this is fantastic and like everyone
he was loving his life in this movie.
Right? Like it's one of those things like who knew he could be so intimidating and like still charming at the same time. And I was thinking as I put together this list and like thinking of things to say about this film, I would love to see a TED Talk with this character to talk, just to see him talk for like an hour about religion and atheism and all this stuff, but without the absolute dread that I may not make it out of this TED Talk alive. Right? It was really intense, and the two, I think Sophie Thatcher was one of the actresses who's done some interesting stuff lately, and like everyone was just on point here. Like they all play their roles so well, but. Like I look forward to revisiting this one. It was really good. It was a solid little horror film, and among a year where there was a lot of really interesting horror stuff going on, like thrillers happening. Like it was tough to just find a couple to put on this list.
Well, knowing you, I assume that half the list is going to be horror movies. I kind of figured.
And in past years, you'd be right. It's like 100%. And I was looking through the list. I'm like, oh, there's not a lot of horror on the list this year. I was kind of surprised, but there was a lot of indie horror that came out that was like pulling me to the theaters. So might have to put together a top 10 list of just scary movies.
Yeah, Heretic for me a little bit. It felt like it was a really cool setup, and they weren't sure exactly how to land it. But it was like it was really good though, and I love Hugh Grant's this stage of his career. Or just seen him starting around like the Gentleman, and you know he's doing all the Guy Ritchie movies and stuff. And he's just like it looks like he's just having a blast on the screen. There's no kind of he's not worried about his career anymore, where it's going. In Dungeons and Dragons, he was in there as well.
Oh yeah.
But it's just like I'm loving this stage of Hugh Grant's career, where it's just like he is enjoying. He was chewing the scenery so hard in Heretic. I love that so much. All the performances were great. That's that sense of dread, and just like the back of his performative, thing where he's talking about, he's questioning them on their religion and everything. It's like, yeah, no, Hugh Grant made that movie. The other actors were great for sure, but yeah, Hugh Grant is like,
yeah.
I want more of him on the screen, giving his monologues there. Yeah, 100%.
And that's the thing. You're like, oh my God, I just watched Hugh Grant talk for like an hour straight about religion. And it's like, I didn't think that would be so captivating, but it was. It was great. Where are you for number 9?
Number 9, switching the almost complete other end of the spectrum. Super big. I think it was one of the most expensive movies produced this year. Not the most expensive, but certainly up there. It's a superhero flick, and I want to give credit where credit is due. I'm going to put Deadpool and Wolverine at my number 9. Yeah, going it is. I know it's hit or miss now. People are kind of, on this. I don't know why Ryan Reynolds of all people seems to be so super polarizing. But now that's a little bit more popular to kind of hate on Ryan Reynolds for quote unquote doing the same thing all the time. But Deadpool really is kind of the role he was born to play, right? He has that character down to a science. And, I don't want to spoil anything by talking about other people who were in it. Go and watch it. What makes Deadpool work, I think, is like he's got all the crass humor and the jokes and the fourth wall breaking. But at the core of those movies is always the core of kind of that heartfelt, that's a heartfelt kind of sentiment, right? Where it's always about Deadpool trying to find his place in the world, and there's something really enduring about that. And this was really, as much as they made fun of all the old kind of Fox movies, this was a surprisingly poignant love letter to all of those that Fox era of movies. And it wasn't treating them as the butt of the joke. It wasn't laughing at them. It was laughing kind of with them, right? It's like there was something to be said when before the MCU came along and kind of codified everything and really, skyrocketed. Like the MCU really did a great job ushering in that era of superheroes, but during that early Fox era of them just trying to figure things out and throwing up characters on screen and seeing, some of them work better than others. But seeing like the people who are making this movie, it was a great little outing between, obviously there's a whole meta commentary with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman and their kind of bromance going on that was kind of brought into this movie, and seeing, Wolverine on screen in the comic accurate costume as well, which is pretty cool, to be honest. You could tell this is a labor of love, right? Despite big budget, I don't know, it's like $150 million, $200 million plus budgets. But yeah, it's like I'll be critical of superhero movies, but I'm gonna give credit where credit is due. Ryan Reynolds in his own, Hugh Jackman playing again. Like I can't. It's hard to picture anybody else playing Wolverine, right? Except for maybe a certain cameo that was in there. And it had that kind of heart at the center of it, and it was just like this touching love letter to that era of the Fox superhero movies in a really pretty respectful way, which you think it's kind of an irony there, thinking about kind of Deadpool, right? So yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine, my number 9 pick. I'll give respect to the superhero genre where it is due.
I gotta admit something here.
Yep.
I do not have Deadpool Wolverine in my list of 2024 films. It's like I forgot this movie.
You didn't even log it. Wow.
I'm sure I logged it, but I didn't add it to this list. That's kind of upsetting because, I'm not sure if it would have made my top 10, but you're absolutely spot on with everything you said about it. Like, the movie is endearing, and that chemistry with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, like, really pulls the movie forward no matter what's going on. And having it be like that love letter to all the old Fox properties, like 100% agree. I loved all those old stuff, like the old X-Men movies and all the other initial Marvel attempts. Like, there was something very special about that time period. It was like, they paved the way. What's the saying? They walked so that the MCU could run, type of thing. Like,
essentially, yeah. And you see, like, even stuff like Daredevil and Elektra, stuff that was like, I'm not going to argue that these are great movies, but like, they were trying stuff out on screen. They were Charlie Cox's Daredevil, amazing work. Ben Affleck was like, but like, they were just, there's the first time. I mean, I think he was in the Hulk movies, like back in the day, the 70s or 80s there, with Lou Ferrigno's Hulk. I think there was a couple made for TV movies, and I think Daredevil's in there. But it was really the first time they were experimenting with this. And, like, there is something kind of endearing about it, right? And something kind of almost kind of innocent when you look at like the MCU kind of machinery, right?
Number 8 for me is Gladiator 2.
Oh, nice.
But basically going into this movie like with the lowest expectations, because how do you follow up like Gladiator, 2000? It's been a quarter of a century and we're revisiting Gladiator. Like, it just felt like such a money cash grab that, like, I didn't even believe this movie was happening until Gladiator 2 showed up on screen at the theater.
I thought it was just like one of those fake rumors, like, you hear about, and it's like, this can't be a real thing that's happening.
Yeah. And I think it does a pretty decent job. And at least for me, it was very entertaining. I really had a lot of fun watching it. It does a decent job of like continuing some of the characters from the first one. Like, I didn't really mind that it just it was a retread of like the overall like plot of the first film, like all the same kind of events, just it hits the same beats. But I mean, Denzel Washington in the movie, incredible. And it's like they had to cast somebody, because the lead playing, the lead here, not nearly as charismatic as Russell Crowe was. And those
are tough shoes to fill. Yeah, exactly.
That's right. It's like no insult to this actor. It's like, those were tough shoes to fill for sure. And Denzel Washington comes in and it's got like this other character who's a little he's enjoying, he's chewing the scenery, as you might say.
You need him and Hugh Jackman in a movie. Him and Hugh.
Oh,
Not Hugh Laurie or Hugh Jackman. What was, I forgot the Hughes.
Hugh Grant and Hugh
Grant.
Jackman.
No, you see Hugh Grant and Denzel Washington in a movie together, just chewing the scenery. That'd be amazing.
Oh.
A scenery chew off.
I even put a little pun in here, but we already moved past it here. Where I said,
Are you entertained?
it says you realize how much presence Russell Crowe had, and that was going to be nearly impossible sandal to fill if Forever was the lead of the sequel.
Boom-bots. There we go.
I mean, especially the past few years, or maybe like past decade, like Ridley Scott has been up and down. I think people are like kind of tired of him here because
fair.
he's getting a little more outspoken, and when his movies don't do well, he's sort of attacking some groups in here and there. But when he churns out a movie, like he knows how to shoot a movie. Like like this thing is,
Yeah.
it looks incredible, and like the action in it is incredible. Everything about it is pretty awesome, and I am shocked that I have Gladiator 2 in a top 10 list of 2024, 24 years after the first Gladiator.
I think it deserves to be there. Like, I was thoroughly surprised. I went in with a huge level of trepidation because the first movie is so great, so well loved. And the 24-year later sequel, and after hearing all the rumors of what that sequel could have been, I'm like, there's no way this is going to be good. And I love the theater, completely pumped, and like, yeah, this is really good. Yeah, Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal was really good in there as well.
Yeah.
Connie Nielsen back. Yeah, it was just, you don't get those kind of, I feel like you don't go this kind of like epic sword and sandal movies anymore. And you know, to see Ridley Scott kind of effortlessly just step back into that genre and make a great movie like this, phenomenal. There's no reason why it couldn't work and couldn't kind of revive that genre, you know?
Where is your number 8?
So number 8, again, I need another disclaimer. I think this one technically was released in 2023.
I just want to throw out here that in previous years, I feel like we've talked about it, we've done the episode, and then we'll find out that you left off a bunch of movies that have limited releases, and it's very upsetting because Letterboxd will officially date the movie based on its very first like festival release, and then the wide release could be a year, and what you're discovering is years later for some of these films.
Yeah, so I'm going by the wide release. And this one too, just so people are aware, the Canadian government has mandated, you know, a certain level of Canadian content, or CanCon. So I had to include at least one Canadian film on here by law.
Yeah, I think I might hit a fine for that one here.
But I'm gonna throw up number 8 for me is Red Rooms.
Okay.
You know, this one kind of came up. This one, it's funny. I saw this. I kept going online to stream and stuff. I kept seeing this on here, and I kept putting it off. And I finally sat down and watched it recently. And you know, you talk about psychological thrillers, and this one was just, you know, had me kind of on the edge of my seat. It was just super kind of uncomfortable. And I think it asked, you know, a lot of questions. I think it was really challenging, you know, that kind of relationship that people have, that audiences have with like that true crime genre, right? Of there's something, you know, people being obsessed with, you know, these crimes and these criminals. There's something kind of insidious about that, right? Something kind of, you know, you might look at that and being maybe even unhealthy to go that far. And this movie really goes through, like, this is a movie that really bears kind of rewatches where you go through. It's like, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. Describing, this is one of those movies, again, it's like as soon as I start going down and describing it, it's going to spoil it. But really, really fascinating character. You know, really, really fascinating exploration of potentially sociopathy. But this kind of parasitic relationship between audiences and kind of the real crime genre, and like how far is too far, and is it a healthy relationship to have where you're kind of, you know, taking real crimes and real criminals and kind of like putting them up on screen or on podcast for our amusement, and ask these, you know, some of these difficult questions, right, about our interaction with how we portray crime in media, like real true crime in media, right? And it is also kind of a taut kind of edge of your seat kind of thriller, like not really sure what happens next. And then when you are sure what happens next, you're like, no, this can't be, you gotta be kidding me. Like this isn't gonna, you're not gonna do what I think you're gonna do, are you? Kind of thing. And yeah, I was engaged from beginning to end. It's a French language film. But don't let that deter you. It's a great movie, and it's nice to see just from a fellow Canuck, getting some quality content out there. And I hope that the director Pascal Plante, I hope he gets more kind of recognition going out there. Somebody compared him. He didn't like the comparison. I was reading an interview, but he was people compared him to like David Fincher, compared his films to David Fincher. And I think even though he doesn't like that comparison, I think maybe that's I understand the reason why certain people would make that kind of comparison in terms of that kind of slow burn, very atmospheric, very, everything's shot very purposefully. You look at the camera work and the cinematography. But if you haven't checked out Red Rooms, highly, highly recommend. Great movie, great Canadian movie, great little kind of crime drama, psychological thriller. But yeah, Red Room's my number 8.
Right on. I haven't seen the movie, but I will expedite it near the top of my watch list and check that out.
All right. What's your number 7? We're moving up the list here.
Oh, yeah. We got to move through this list. There's a lot to cover. Number 7 is one of these, again, like genre category picks that I have to have an animated film represented here. And this year it is Flow, which seems like a small film that follows a cat and some of those cats, they on this adventure where they're kind of like forced from. I don't want to spoil too much. So I'm going to speak in vagaries here, but like the animals are being displaced from their home, and
it's like a Fern Gully type situation.
Sorry,
it's like a Fern Gully type situation.
No.
Okay.
Although honestly, I've never seen Fern Gully, so I can't say.
Okay, never mind. That was a useless question.
In any event, they're forced from their home and they go on this grand adventure. And so the cat meets up with different animal friends and they sort of reluctantly become friends. And it's really difficult to talk about. I mean, there's no spoken word. It's dialogue free. It's animal noises only. There's no humans in this movie. It's animated really nicely. Apparently, I saw this in the trivia afterwards. It was animated entirely in a software package that is free and open source. So there's going to be like some limitations in some of the animation and what they can do, but they made it work. Like there's this very specific style to the film that is really nice. And honestly, like I was just glued to the screen the entire time. I was so invested into this cat, but also the friends. There's a golden retriever in this adventure as well that they meet up with. It's not like a homeward bound situation here, because when I'm first reading about the movie, I'd be like, oh my God, is this going to be homeward bound with like the talking animals and stuff or like voiceover? No, it's none of that stuff. Like it does get a little fantastical at times, but it's this adventure that's just, it's mystical and it's like, it's magical. I don't know. Like the empathy I was feeling for them, I felt like I was as emotionally almost drained by the end of this film. You know what I mean? It was like, I could feel like, oh, there's going to be horrible things happen. There's going to be tense situations and I'm going to get really upset. And I don't know if it helps, like especially the two main animals there was like a cat. I've had many cats throughout my life and I had a golden retriever years ago, and seeing the two of them on screen, I was just like, oh my God, this is like, just rip the heart out of my chest right now. Like, man, it was wild. And I think everyone should set aside, the 90 minutes or whatever length of film this is, and check it out. It's so beautiful. Like it's really something else. It's just a gorgeous film.
Nice. I have not seen it, so I'm gonna have to put this on my watch list. Also, by your criteria now, I've failed because I don't have an animated movie on here. I don't think
it's one of those things. When I was I want to have an animated one because I almost put Inside Out 2. Spoiler alert for one of my honorable mentions later on, but Inside Out 2, like they know how to make a movie, and you know that emotional tug they do at the end of all those Pixar films. Like I was really feeling it. I love Inside Out. Inside Out 2 was also great, but I'm like, can I put Inside Out 2 on top 10 list? And I watched a few more anime movies like Flow. Flow is like, that's where it's at.
Okay.
Number 7 for you.
Number 7 for me is probably as far from Flow as you can probably get this year. My number 7 is Longlegs.
Oh,
It is not a family-friendly adventure with animals. It is another, I think, psychological thriller / horror movie with Nicolas Cage and who's the other one? Micah Monroe. I'm probably
Micah
butchering her
Monroe,
name.
yes.
Micah Monroe. Okay, I think to its detriment, it was being compared to Silence of the Lambs, which, you know, any movie you can start to compare it to Silence of the Lambs or Casablanca or you know, Citizen Kane. Is like, well, yeah, of course, you're gonna come up short. But Longlegs was, you know, so atmospheric. I can't remember if I'd seen any other of Osgood Perkins' movies or not. So this might have been my introduction to his work. But just that feeling of kind of dread and anxiety through the whole movie. I was feeling it the whole time. Nicolas Cage's performance in this was, you know, unhinged, but in a very specifically kind of focused manner. Like this character he created was just, I still shudder when I think about this character, and I'm just like, yeah, I get chills down my spine. Not everything worked 100%. There was the ending was a bit of the supernatural kind of stuff. It was like, you know, it was like, okay, I kind of sort of get it. But yeah, but overall, like Longlegs, like that's one you talk about rewatchability. That's when I see myself rewatching like Silence of the Lambs, you know, on a regular basis. Like it's going to get into the Halloween rotation, I think. It was just, I think, you know, really kind of simple. And then just the use of the camera, you know, the writing. It was not big action set pieces, but it's just like this slow burn and more this, you know, psychological kind of horror and psychological thriller. It takes some turns that you don't quite expect. Maybe you do. I don't know. I'm not one of those people. I know there's people out there who pride themselves on figuring out the movie before it starts. So it's like, I don't go into a movie trying to decode it. I want to be fooled. I'm there. Movies in themselves are tricks, right? It's still images linked together to form the illusion of movements. Like I'm in a theater to be fooled. I want you to fool me. So I'm not trying to figure out the magic trick. So it took some turns where I was not expecting, and I was just like, what is happening? This is craziness. But if you want to be creeped out, if you want to be scared, if you want to feel that you get unsettled, like watching a horror movie, Longlegs has you covered in spades. Highly, highly recommend. Especially if you're a fan of Nicolas Cage, as I am. That was an insta buy. I was like, yeah, I see that. That goes immediately into the collection. So number 7 for me, Longlegs.
Maybe we should have a list of Insta-buy movies that we bought in 2024. It's just like, which movies did we not wait to come down in price to buy? Because Longlegs was that for me as well. I just went out and grabbed it immediately. It didn't make my top 10 here, but, you know, it was fantastic. We recorded a whole episode on this film. Check it out. Check out the movie.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, it was great. Nicolas Cage is pretty awesome in here, too. Just so wild.
We're at number 6.
Number 6. Okay. I almost feel like maybe controversial because this is more of a recent watch for me that wasn't sitting with perfectly, but I put Nosferatu, Robert Eggers' newest
I kind of figured
film.
Robert Eggers comes up, you're going to put him on top 10. I kind of assumed.
That's pretty much it. It's like, I'm a fan. I think I'm a fanboy of Robert Eggers. I've loved every movie. I mean, he's done 3 movies previous. The Witch, loved it, 5 out of 5. Yep. Lighthouse, 5 out of 5. Northman, I think was like 4 out of 5 for me. And I think I even put Nosferatu at 4 out of 5. A couple years ago, I watched the original Nosferatu, 1922. Was such an incredible experience seeing that movie, not really realizing like what a foundational thing it was and all the stuff surrounding it of like how it was, copyright struck type of thing, and tried to remove it from existence, and it survived and became like this template for so many more movies that came after it. And almost disappointed watching this that a few scenes didn't come up. I saw one jokey review where in the original 22 version, Nosferatu himself like carries his own coffin around, and it's like comically huge in the movie. As like, I needed to see Bill Skarsgård carry this coffin over his head. You know what I mean? didn't get to see that, but I got to see a lot of really neat things here. I mean, Robert Eggers, I think I don't know, the performances he gets out of his actors here too. I think Lily Rose Depp does a terrific job. Bill Skarsgård.
Yeah.
I mean, his character.
He was Count Orlok, right?
He was Count Orlok. Yeah. It was
Okay.
just, he
I was looking for
disappears
the
into the
movie,
role,
yeah.
right? But he's so creepy and he's so menacing. Willem Dafoe, of course, he's got to show up in all of Eggers' films, and Willem Dafoe should just show up in all films in general, I think.
100%.
So it's like you just have like this perfect storm of Eggers doing his thing, and yeah, it's just a classic horror. And I'm hoping that more people get out to see the other iterations of Nosferatu and other vampire stuff after seeing this, because I feel like you and we've gone down the vampire rabbit hole a couple times as well. It's just really, really neat, and especially I mentioned that because we went and saw Renfield a couple years ago with Nicholas Hoult as Renfield, and then Nicholas Hoult is showing up in here as another character in the vampire mythos. And
it's essentially the same character because Nosferatu is based on Dracula, right?
yeah,
and so he's essentially playing the same character, different name, and to see him play it in two different contexts, it's like, yeah, it's a really neat kind of cinematic kind of conversation, I guess, those two movies are having with each other, that two characters having with each other, played by the same actor. It's really, really interesting. I thought occurred, yeah.
So it was one of those things where it's recent. It hasn't had time to settle for me to like fully put it on the top 10, but I know if I'm using this criteria of like, I'm going to rewatch this, I'm going to rewatch Nosferatu a few times. And I've already got my pre-order in for the 4K. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I think out of all of his films so far, this is kind of my least favorite of his, which is to say it's a good movie still.
Yeah.
But I think just in terms of kind of that Dracula mythos, I was expecting him to bring a little bit more, something different to it. So maybe it was my expectations that were the problem, right? Otherwise, like you say, like the performances were great, really well made. Like the dude knows how to make a movie.
Yeah.
I think my favorite of his is The Lighthouse. It was the most kind of unique I've seen of his movies. All his movies have been great though. I love that he's kind of a unique voice. He's got a very specific style and tone and vision, and I really appreciate that. So I look forward to everything he does. And I think he's got the werewolf movie coming out?
Supposedly, I've seen his name attached to a whole bunch of upcoming projects. I don't know if it's just wishful thinking for people. Like, yeah, we want to see a werewolf version. We want to see a Frankenstein from, like, let him do all the Universal monster movies.
I'm down with that, man. I'm down with that.
All right, let's move on to your number 6.
My number 6. Okay, so this is actually a Netflix original here. I'm pretty critical of Netflix movies, and I think usually rightfully so. But I do have to give credit where credit is due. I went to this movie, no expectations at all, and I sat down and watched it, absolutely blown away. Oh no, wait, we're number 6.
Yeah, number 6.
Never mind. I'll say that for next time. I was jumping ahead to number 5. Number 6, all that build up for nothing. I can't even read my own handwriting. No. Okay. Number 6. All right. This is another movie. I didn't know what to expect going into this. Right. It was an actor I'd seen in a long time. It was first time directing. Wasn't sure what to expect. Kind of blew my mind. Number 6 for me is Monkey Man.
Monkey Man. Interesting choice. All right.
Loving some action movies this year, as you'll see from my next couple picks. There's a definite theme here. Apparently I was in an action movie kind of mood. But Monkey Man, Dev Patel comes in, I think directs, stars, and I think he wrote it as well. He's one of the writers as well. But to see like Dev Patel, like you see his other roles, and then to go to like, he's this hardened, he's at this underground, unlicensed wrestling fight club kind of ring, and then he goes on this path of revenge against corrupt police officers and corrupt religious and political figures, and just the fighting in here is just it's up there with like Raid levels of kind of brutality and kind of the visceral, like you feel the hits and people are getting hurt in some really, really gnarly ways. But like as a first movie directed by Dev Patel, phenomenal. As going from, you look at his other roles and go to an action star. Like, I would never peg of all the actors you asked me to peg as like the next action star. It's the same thing as like back in the day when Matt Damon came up in The Bourne Identity. You would never guess that Matt Damon was going to be an action star. That wasn't his trajectory, given his current history. And to see Dev Patel pull that off, yeah, the movie was just, start to finish, it was just a blast watching this. And I think there was a lot of, there was undertones of like kind of political commentary criticizing some stuff going on with the Indian government. And things like, I think people were analyzing it afterwards and they were like, yeah, this character is an analog for this kind of political figure in India right now. And so like, apparently like it would cause some controversy in that part of the world because it was, I guess, if you understand kind of the context, it was clearly criticizing some of the politicians and leadership in the region. So, there's some depth to it as well. Also, I didn't have, transgender warrior monks on my bingo card for 2024, but like it was a really cool element. Like all these story elements came together, and just like I was utterly fascinated by this world that Monkey Man created. So I haven't had a chance to check it out. Check out Monkey Man. It is, if you like action, if you like kind of the Raid style, hardcore, really visceral action, this should be right up your alley.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think Monkey Man landed as well for me, but I honestly think I've been overly critical of what I consider like John Wick, like not knockoffs necessarily, but
John Wick, I guess, is yeah. I guess you can see the concept of John Wick. I was thinking more of the Raid, but I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Which John Wick, you could say, yeah, definitely takes inspiration from the Raid, right? Like it's a continuous
lineage. Yeah.
Lineage, and this is definitely worth checking out again. It was pretty engaging. It was a lot of fun at the theater, and there is some good action there.
Also, it is sitting on my shelf right now as well. Yeah. All right, now we're getting to the top five.
Top five. We're halfway there. Top five.
The creme de la
number
creme.
5 for me. This is one that I had a bit lower, and I was wasn't sure where to put it. But when I started writing up a little description of this, I climbed it up a few spots.
Okay.
And that is The Substance.
Ooh.
And I think by now everyone is kind of aware of like how insane this movie is, right? Like, and I kind of like that aspect where it's like that David Cronenbergian body horror leaks out into other films, and then those hit like mass appeal, and you're like, oh yeah, this is this stuff. I saw this in the theater. The audience was really great. I feel like that definitely enhanced like the experience of watching this movie.
Yeah.
Like you could feel people squirming in their seats, and I feel like you could hear their nervous laughter at certain scenes. And like, I swear you could hear people like covering their eyes at certain parts. And I think there's one scene particularly, I won't spoil it. I won't say which one, but like I managed, eyes wide open throughout the whole thing, except I had to close it for one spot. I just couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch it unfold on this massive screen in front of me. So I had to close my eyes once.
I'm trying to guess which scene that is.
There's that stuff, but like also the movie has really good messaging here. It's like the Hollywood machine that like eats people up and spits them out. The fame, celebrity, aging, specifically around women in the industry, and like just replacing them with younger and younger people. Like there's just like a cutoff, and it's all controlled by like Quaid in this movie. What's his first name?
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid. Sorry, Dennis Quaid.
Come
like
on.
I'll never get that image of like that close up of him eating out of my head. Like it is so disgusting, and
It's one of the grossest scenes of the movie. Yeah.
Right. Everything about these guys in this industry, they have too much power over this, and they're just like, it's gross. That scene was gross. That character is gross. What goes on in Hollywood is gross. And I think, I mean, not to mention like Demi Moore, fantastic. Margaret Qualley, again, like really good. And what I mentioned before, there's like that underlying sci-fi that runs throughout the film, because the central, conceit is it's just pure science fiction at that point. But we can all get behind it. It was really neat.
Yeah. No, great movie. Maybe as a spoiler, I'm gonna save some comments.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, you don't want to tell anyone what's going on in this, just that you have to go out and see it, basically.
Yeah, 100%. It's hard to talk. It's one of those movies it's hard to talk about without spoiling, right?
All right. Number 5.
Number 5. Okay. Now, I'm usually pretty critical of Netflix movies. Rightfully so, I think. But I got to give credit where credit is due. This was a Netflix original. I threw it on, not really expecting a whole heck of a lot, but it won me over. Really well made movie. Rebel Ridge. I'm going to go with my number 5.
Yes.
Again, keeping in, like, there's a couple here where it's definitely some action movies I put on the list this year. seem to kind of hit home for me. But Rebel Ridge, directed and written by Jeremy Saulnier. Star Aaron Pierre. I got to see this dude in everything. Dude, such an amazing performance, such an amazing performer, and like just like super captivating. But like this movie did not go where I expected it to go. I think we have an episode about this, right?
I'm pretty sure we did record, or we talked about recording.
I think we're
one
losing
night.
our minds. The second time was like, did we record an episode on this? Like we don't even know what episodes we recorded. This is great.
If we didn't, we should have, because it really was a solid. Like, it was a great film.
But yeah, I love, like, it was so deliberately paced, and just like Saulnier was ratcheting up that tension step by step by step. Aaron Pierre's main character there was really he was trying to de-escalate it constantly, working with obviously the commentary on policing in America, right? As you know, you look at the historical kind of social context, and obviously this doesn't exist in the void, but he was working, looking at the police and trying to like de-escalate the whole time. And then when things finally come to a head, they figure out who this guy is, and and then the confrontation starts. It's just, that nonstop kind of action ride. And then later on that, there's that social kind of commentary in there as well. Just gives it like that extra depth, right? So it's not just mindless action. And also, I guess, a bit of a spoiler alert, but I love the fact, here's this, this kind of twist where the big action hero fighting the corrupt cops, and he doesn't go on a killing rampage. He doesn't kill a single person in the whole movie, but he's still a total badass. And I was like, I thought that's such a powerful message in this day and age where, even going back to the 80s, classic 80s action hero, what do you do in the end? You kill the main bad guy, right? That's always, you kill a bunch of bad guys and you kill the main bad guy. And this one is like, no, he was specifically going out of his way. He was incapacitating his enemies, specifically using non-violent force. And I thought, what a powerful message to have, especially given the context and the commentary on the American legal system. Really, like, that same kind of commentary could be levied against a lot of our, policing and legal systems. In Canada, we have our own kind of challenges, like in that regard as well. But and then to have that just like a great story, great action, great actors. I'll give Netflix, you know what? I'll give credit where credit is due. A great original movie. Rebel Ridge, if you haven't seen it, check it out. Great action movie. Hopefully this comes out on disc so I can pick this up.
Yeah, really great. I mean, we dismiss Netflix so often, but for a deluge of garbage, they put out some really good stuff every so often, right?
Yeah.
And Rebel Ridge is definitely up there.
I'm glad I got over that prejudice and checked this out. So yeah, Rebel Ridge. We'll sort through the direct on Netflix. You don't have to, but yeah, Rebel Ridge. Check this out.
All right, number 4.
We're getting up near the top here.
Yeah,
some phenomenal movies here in the top 3 or 4.
These are phenomenal movies, without a doubt. Number 4 for me is Alien Romulus. All right.
Interesting.
I love the Alien franchise. I think they're all great. Even Alien vs. Predator, I enjoy watching. Am I going to be biased? Maybe. I think this is the best Alien film since Aliens. Like, this would be number 3 in my ranking of the Alien movies.
Agree to disagree.
And this is it's one of these things. I mean,
fair enough.
Like, this movie keeps getting better every time I watch it, and I've seen it 3 times now.
Oh wow!
Twice in theaters, including a awesome laser projection experience with you. That was great. And finally, when I finally was able to find the 4K disc, because it didn't seem to be in stores, I don't know if it was just sold out or supply issues, popped it into the player, watched it again, and was like, this movie is boom, another half star. I started at 3.5 stars on the film. because there are issues in there that held me back from enjoying it when I first watched it. It was like too distracting. Second time I watched it, I know it's coming up. You know what? I don't care. By the third time,
Watch it after this episode.
they actually addressed some of the issues that we had seen the movie in theater. Okay. So if you watch the disc version, it is actually slightly different in terms of special effects than the streaming version or what you saw in the theater now. Not that that made it like okay, but for me, I moved way past it. I was like, I'm totally done with that little bit of issue. I love the movie. I just love that it, well, I shouldn't say I love that it was like, it felt like Alien. And by feeling like Alien, I know the criticism is that it didn't do anything like really new. Like a lot of the elements were from previous Alien movies. And I have no problem with that. Because in my mind, like a horror franchise, you know, often does retread. Like how many times does Jason go through, you know, camps and like kill people, right? It's one of those things. I'm not trying to belittle that as well, because I think it does do some things like the android conversation here. Having the android, get him like he was the actor who did a really good job,
amazing job.
And I think that was a newish take, innovative take at least, on the android in the alien world, where you know some of the other stuff is also great. At the end of the day, I just love seeing the aesthetic of Alien, and I want to see more of these things. I like that it was kind of like almost like a tiny story. It wasn't like super big or too expanding. It just did what it needed to do and got out. Fede Alvarez, I really enjoyed his remake of Evil Dead. Again, I might be a little biased there too. I've just really enjoyed his stuff. Don't Breathe. Like every time I watch that, it climbs higher up my list of good films. So I'm looking forward to see what he does next.
Yeah, he's a solo director. Alien Romulus was it was a tight little thriller, right? So yeah, like you know, I was being a bit facetious, calling it. I'd probably like I have to watch it again, I think. Because again, it may have been like a victim of my expectations, right? Where I have a specific set of expectations, and I have to kind of, you know,
100%. And we've talked about it on almost every entry here. Like sometimes,
a
movie like
in the right state of mind. But I love that. But I do. I like the movie. I didn't like it as much as you, but I don't mean to intimate that I like the movie. I like going back to the alien world again. So
throwing it out as number 3 in the Alien franchise might be a hot take, but you know what? Haters gonna hate. Get out.
Poor David Fincher.
Yeah, you know what? I have to rewatch that one for sure. It's probably time for a full Alien rewatch.
As a Fincher fan, that's some bold statements there, Brian.
And I mean, honestly, I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone who would say that is anything but Fincher's worst film is Alien 3.
Oh yeah, I won't argue that point. Yeah. All
right. Your number 4. We're on number 4.
Oh my God. I am losing it here. Okay. I'm going to keep in the vein. I don't know. It wasn't intentional when I put together the list. I'll put it this way. Another action movie.
Oh boy.
This was one that really, I insta-buy. I wanted to pick this out as soon as I saw this. Kind of flew under the radar, or kind of like, I think it was a bit of a box office flop, and maybe we had to do with the marketing, because the marketing didn't hit for me. But number 4 for me is The Fall Guy.
Oh yeah,
absolutely blew all my expectations out of the water. I was looking at it, and like when I saw the marketing for this, it looked like almost like a rom-com or something. Not to say like rom-coms can't be good, but usually not my cup of tea or my first kind of pick. I also didn't realize it was based on an old TV show from the 70s or something, I think, right? But then I sat down and I actually watched it, and directed by David Leitch, who was a former stuntman himself, and all of his movies, you know, he includes like, it's very kind of stunt heavy, but he's also, because he knows what he's doing, you know, that all the stunts are really, really phenomenal.
All the work is quite legit. What you're seeing there is like, it's like going back to that John Wick thing where, again, like the stunt folks are putting it on screen for us. Like they're in charge.
Oh, yeah.
Now, and they make the action like leagues above. And the actors are in on it too, right? It makes a huge difference when you're watching the film.
Yeah, I think David Leitch, he actually did direct John Wick, right? Yeah, he did. Yeah. John Wick. And Bullet Train. Bullet Train was another one a couple years back. Kind of flew under the radar, I felt. But I absolutely love that. So I'm loving David Leitch's stuff. But just a stunt extravaganza of a film. Amazing showcase for stunt work. I think in the movie they called out like the main character played by Ryan Gosling. In the movie he got the record for car flip. It was a real record in real life. The stunt person who actually did that was like
nice.
the number of times the car was rolling over. He actually set a Guinness World Record during the film. So it's literally like a record-setting movie in terms of like the stunt work. But just like in terms of I haven't seen the overall show. I think Lee Majors starred in it originally back in the day. I don't know what the premise of I don't know what the story arc of the overall show was. But watch like the story in this and the performances. You have, Ryan Gosling, obviously, and then you have Emily Blunt and Aaron Taylor Johnson. I love when this dude shows up. I feel like I don't know if his agent is just kind of all over the map, because like he'll show up in like some of the best films of the year and some of the worst. Yeah, like from top to bottom, thoroughly entertained, like super well written plot. There were some wacky scenes where the main character is slipped some drugs in his drink, and he's tripping and seeing some stuff. It's just it's always tough to pull those scenes off and kind of make them engaging and not too like over the top or like, yeah, okay, whatever. But it's like, it was some really hilarious stuff. And I think one of the things I was watching the ads or the marketing for this, and it made Ryan Gosling's character look like an idiot. I was like, but in the movie he's actually quite intelligent and pretty clever.
Yeah.
And so like the marketing, I don't know, the marketers for this should have been fired. They did not do this film justice. It was just, I highly encourage, this is one of those movies where we really needs audience support to get more quality films made like this. It's so rare where you get, other than Mission Impossible, I can't think of another movie franchise. I think Star Trek would be kind of cheating a little bit, but like how many movies based on old TV show properties end up being amazing like this? Like it's a few and far between.
Yeah.
So do yourself a favor, check this movie out. It's also got some funny commentary on Hollywood and the filmmaking process and the stunt process, but overall, like just a blast, start to finish. The comedy, the drama, the kind of mystery, intrigue, so well written, so well directed, so well acted. Is just I can't believe that we let a movie like this as a society kind of fail. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say.
This one, I agree. It was an instant buy for me when it came out on disc. Loved it. The advertising. I went to the movies a lot last year, and this movie was advertised every single time for about 4 months.
It was.
Straight. And I was like, I get it, guys. I'm gonna go see this movie. Stop telling me about this movie. And when I was so happy when I was sitting down to watch this and be like, I never have to watch that trailer in the theater again. And the movie lived up to, I was expecting goodness, and it was really great. I had a lot of fun. It was a good action film.
So that was my number 4. So now we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Brian, what's your number 3 movie here?
Number 3.
This is gotta be mind blowing, earth shattering, world changing cinema. No pressure.
No pressure. Well, I think this movie is up to the task. It is Furiosa, the Mad Max saga. But it's just Furiosa. And I mean, talking about expectations, like I was nervous going into this. Like, you're making a prequel to one of the best action films of the past 20 years in Fury Road.
Maybe even ever, right?
Yeah. But George Miller, we trust. I mean, we have to. And he's back for this. If it was anyone else, yeah, I'd be like really hesitant. But George Miller, he's done all the Mad Max movies. This guy knows how to make some action. Man, this movie knocks it out of the park. It's incredible. Yeah. The cinematics are incredible. The music is astounding. It's just, I don't know. It's another action movie for the ages. And I ended up rewatching it again last night just because I was kind of flip-flopping, because I'd rewatched Alien Romulus. I've watched it 3 times in the course of like 4 months now. And I'm like, is it better than Furiosa or not? But I think Furiosa is just straight up the better movie. Although I may watch Alien more often, Furiosa, incredible. Like, and also like this ballsy move of like not even have the main actress Anya Taylor-Joy show up for the first hour of the movie. But that first hour was so compelling. I mean, there's just so much going on. Chris Hemsworth in here.
Chewing the scenery,
Dementis.
man. Yeah.
I mean, we did an episode on this, I think, and
Oh, yeah, we did.
it was so much fun revisiting this the other night watching it. It was just so good. And again, just like Fall Guy, this kind of bombed at the box office, like did not perform what you want it to, which is definitely a theme for 2024. And we may not get another one. If that's really, it's really upsetting. I was really pleased knowing that Miller and like his writers, I think there are two of them or one of them, Miller and someone else wrote this movie. And I think they had written a lot of the stuff even back when they were doing Fury Road. They just kind of knew it was almost like a Star Wars thing where they had
like
released
backstory.
episode 4 and been like, yeah, it's like, because they knew they could give in Fury Road, Furiosa is played by Charlize Theron. And she knew all the backstory of generally probably what happened in this movie to like add into her character. And so when you watch this and then Fury Road afterwards, like you really see like this is a Furiosa saga at this point, and it's incredible. Like it just makes that impact in some of the events in Fury Road that much more significant. It enhances the original movie. It's so good. I mean, come on. Furiosa.
Oh yeah, 100%. It was a great. I think with George Miller, I'm a huge fan of the Mad Max series, 100%. And to see, Furiosa, I was kind of a little bit. It's a Mad Max saga. It's a Mad Max movie without Mad Max. It's like, what does that look like? It looks pretty amazing. And to see, to me, like you almost have to watch Furiosa and Mad Max Fury Road kind of together. It almost forms one movie now, right? It's like you can see that kind of continuity, and for like a series that famously disregards its own continuity for the sake of entertainment. Furiosa and Mad Max Fury Road are like surprisingly continuous and fairly. There's no like real breakers in continuity, so like it's a first, I think, in the Mad Max saga, because the other ones play pretty fast and loose with kind of continuity of events and world history and whatnot. So, but yeah, overall, that's a great pick, and that's one sitting on my shelf as well. Gonna watch it over and over again. Yeah, 100%. All the Mad Max. I grew up with the Mad Max films, so yeah, it's gonna be watched 100%.
Number 3, Nathan. What do you got for us?
Number 3, completely different genre altogether. True master of his craft, working in a genre that he truly loves. Really late in his career, he got into doing this. Not late in his career, later in his career, he got into doing a lot of westerns. But my pick for number 3 is Horizon: An American Saga, Chapter 1.
What? Wow.
Directed by Kevin Costner.
Oh my God. Wow.
You talk about epic, right? And watching this movie was just the scope and scale of the movie. And it's one of a planned like 4 or 5 part series. Whether we're going to see part 4 or 5, I think he's filmed part 2 already. It was going to be released in the same year, which would have been a baller move here. But for some reason, I can't remember studio contracts.
Well, it absolutely
and stuff.
died at the box office. That's why we didn't get part 2 released last year.
That was probably it, I guess. But I loved it. I was, again, a complete break of common wisdom and most audiences. I loved it. Was super slow paced. It was following, all these different groups of people. It would cut to them with no explanation from the last scene, which is like, yeah, if you're not kind of in there and if you're not engaged, it's going to be disorienting. But I was along for the ride from scene 1. I was in it, and to watch kind of these stories, as you realize, they're converging on Horizon. Essentially, it's going to be this new town that they're going to build in the Old West, and it's essentially all these characters coming together and their journeys, and that promise of them kind of meeting up in the second one, which there was like a full trailer at the end of chapter 1 talking about showing some stuff that's going to happen in chapter 2 or maybe chapter 3, right? But the whole thing, it's long been a tradition in Hollywood to kind of mythologize the Old West and their own kind of origin story. And you see kind of a more mature take on this, where it's looking at, the settlers. It's also, there was a huge chunk looking at it from the perspective of the indigenous peoples, and there's a whole couple storylines there that were, is it perfect representation? Probably not. But you look at kind of traditional westerns in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and you look at this, and to see, the shift in how different peoples are being portrayed, I think we have seen a lot of progress, and it's really interesting to see these stories being told. There's something about that time period. There's something about that kind of spirit of, putting aside, not putting aside, we shouldn't put aside, but that, I think this deals with concepts of colonialism as well, right? In ways that previous westerns, they didn't have that kind of level of self-consciousness, right? But also mixing kind of more modern, deconstructions and interpretations with that kind of traditional, life on the frontier, and that sense of adventure, that sense of building something new, like the mythology and the reality, and kind of blending those together. And just from the storytelling to like the cinematography, everything was like just some really breathtaking shots. Like it looked like maybe there was some CG in there, I don't know, but it looked like it was shot on location. And just like the landscape and the framing, it was just, you felt like you were there. You felt like this was you felt like this was like American kind of mythology, and you were kind of witnessing these, gods and goddesses and heroes and, angels and demons kind of doing battle and going on these grand adventures. And I was there 100% of the way. I'm a huge fan of Kevin Costner, both as an actor and as a director. And I think he still got, you see that passion. I think Open Range, was the first, well, like he did Dances with Wolves. I guess, I don't know if that could be considered a Western, but Open Range for sure. You see kind of really him dive in as like, he loves the Western genre. You see, what is it? Yellowstone was the TV show. It was essentially it's a modern Western, right? But I saw his passion for this genre and this period in American history. It's dripping in every frame. And, Kevin Costner's son in there, Kevin Costner gives himself, like, fair enough. He gives himself, there's this one scene in there in particular. I'm not going to ruin it. I think it's specifically between him and his son. And it is one of the best scenes in the movie. And I can't blame him for giving himself one of the best scenes in the movie, but, 100%. I can't remember how long this was, like 3 hours or something. And it's just part one, or is it 2 hours, 2.5 hours? It was pretty long.
Yeah.
But it left me wanting more. Again, sitting on my shelf. Notice a pattern here. But if you haven't had a chance to see this, if you are a fan of Westerns, you got to check this out. This is kind of Western viewing 101 now in my book. It's kind of essential. I guess kind of maybe if you break up into eras, maybe the modern Westerns, right?
Without a doubt.
Horizon. The other Horizon.
I'm still disappointed that the second one theatrical release was like canceled or pushed back. Like it was going to be like a month or two between releases, and I was really
a month. Yeah.
This one, I was pretty hesitant going in. There's a lot of negative criticism about the movie, but once I got watching it, I moved past it all. The movie pulled me in, and I wanted more, and hopefully we get more. But
2 is already filmed, so I'm pretty sure they're going to release it.
It's got to get right.
3 and 4 is another story.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's hoping.
Good entry on the list. Number 2 for me is Dune Part 2. All right,
here we go. I was really curious because I thought for sure when you pulled out Nosferatu, what is it, number 4 or 5? I thought that was going to be your number 1 or 2. So now you got me really, really curious now. Yeah. So Dune Part 2, okay.
Dune Part 2, and it was interesting. Like, I don't really like rating movies all the time. Like we use the 5-star system. I don't like doing that all the time because it draws comparisons to each other. So I gave Dune Part 2 5 stars, but it was literally the only movie I think that I gave 5 stars on first viewing in 2024.
Okay.
Do I think it's a 5-star film? Close enough. Like it was really awesome. But round up, right? It was one of those things where on this podcast we've kind of discovered, I think you're of the same mind, where we kind of like knock half-star down on these movies that are half a film. Like the second Spider-Verse movie, Fast X. I mean, it wasn't that great to begin with, but even worse because it was only half a movie. And then you had like the first Dune movie, beloved, but it's half a film, right? And then we got the second half, and we get that huge payoff on the story. So it feels like, it has an actual ending to it. So I can't help but feel like that maybe plays a factor into it. But you know what? I talked before about all these, like the sci-fi that's kind of like lo-fi that runs through, The Substance and these other movies but this is like epic sci-fi. Like this is the sci-fi that I'm envisioning as a kid, seeing on screen and being marveled. Like it's magic on screen. And Denis Villeneuve, my God, like I'm at a loss for words for it, really. I think we did an episode on Dune Part 2, if not Part 1. But man, like it's just so grand and it looks so beautiful. I mean, the Dune story is pretty classic at this point. I did read the first book after watching Dune, I think for the first time. And then I went and read the first book, so I kind of was a little more prepared for it.
Yep.
And I think I enjoyed the changes that happened in the narrative here. I enjoyed all the acting was phenomenal. Like everything. I mean, it's epic sci-fi. And it was done perfectly. And I hope we get more of them. I mean, sometimes these movies don't do great at the box office. But you know what? It's Dune.
Well, assuming things go through, he's going to do his third and final Dune film based on Dune Messiah to kind of finish out his trilogy. Here's hoping that actually gets done.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. I'm really curious because as soon as Dune came out, I started reading the books. I read through all 6 of the original books that Frank Herbert wrote. Oof. I haven't read Brian Herbert's because Brian Herbert, his son, carried on and wrote a bunch of other novels. And I think there's was it Dark Horse maybe did the comic book or graphic novel runs as well. I haven't read all that stuff, but I read the 6 kind of core books that Frank Herbert wrote, and I think kind of makes sense. Dune Messiah, because after that things get pretty super weird, and it'd be hard. As difficult as Dune and Dune Messiah would be to put on screen, the later ones just like I don't know how you would put that. I don't know how you put some of that stuff on screen, to be honest.
And that was the whole thing. It was just like, these films are like unfilmable. Like David Lynch tried Rest in Peace as well, and it became a cult classic. But he hated the film, right? And you know what? It tried. If I was back in the 80s, and I mean, there's been multiple attempts to adapt Dune onto the big screen and small screen. And this one, did they get it right? Not 100%, but man, they made something really amazing here.
You could tell because in interviews, Denis Villeneuve talked about how he read this book, or read the Dune books growing up. So this was a passion project. He wanted to really do right by this. Was not some random Hollywood assignment. He read the Dune books, loved the Dune books, and felt a real responsibility to translate those onto the big screen. And I think, like you're saying, he did a phenomenal job in filming. These are difficult novels. If you read them, they're incredibly dense. They're dealing with incredibly complex examinations of politics and religion and power. And, a lot of it's like people sitting in a room having philosophical debates. And how do you make that cinematic, right? Especially the later books. Later books is even more of this. Like it's mostly just people in rooms having philosophical debates about the nature of power, punctuated by a laser gun battle every once in a while. But yeah, phenomenal effort. Yeah, amazing journey. And like you can see, like Dune was one of the inspirations for Star Wars, right? You see that kind of epic journey and see that reflection there as well. So yeah, it's definitely when you talk about epic, yeah, it's in that same vein, right, as Star Wars. So yeah, 100%.
All right, number 2, Nathan.
All right, number 2 for me is a movie that actually you already mentioned, Brian. I think I enjoyed it maybe a bit more than you, apparently. But number 2 for me was The Substance.
Fantastic pick, yeah.
Phenomenal little movie. I'm a sucker for David Cronenberg movies. And so when somebody told me, I think you mentioned it and other people said, it's like, yeah, there's a clear kind of Cronenbergian influence in The Substance. I'm already biased towards this thing, right? You say Cronenberg is like, well, I'm biased toward it, but I'm also like, because he's one of my favorite directors, it's like, that's a high bar to clear then, right? All of a sudden, just like, you have to clear that bar. And yeah, it cleared that bar with spades. The Substance, you talked about it already. Phenomenal performance by Demi Moore. I think if you looked at her, what did she win? She won some award already, and she was pretty heartfelt speech about how she felt kind of working in Hollywood, and how she was told she was only good for like popcorn movies and stuff, and how she felt she wasn't good. And like, here's one of the most successful, most beautiful, richest people on the planet, and they're having those feelings of insecurity, and realize, oh yeah, it doesn't matter how rich or powerful you are, like those same kind of basic human insecurities. We're all vulnerable to that, right? And on the surface level, the kind of high concept, horror, and some of the horror elements, the body horror mixed with, very Cronenbergian to mix the body horror with the sexual, the human sexuality. That's kind of classic Cronenberg right there. But yeah, the director and writer was Coralie Fargeet. I'm butchering that name probably, but absolutely amazing kind of very layered work here, where you're looking at, it's very specific to women, right? I'm reading a lot online. It was very kind of eye opening. There's one scene, it stuck out to me as well, but it stuck out more for, I guess women, where Demi Moore is going out, getting ready for a date. Had nothing to do with the other body horror. Getting ready for a date, and she sees a reflection of, in this case, there's a young model of the billboard outside a room, feels insecure, goes back, wipes all the makeup off, does it again, changes her clothes. She's about to leave again, goes back and changes. She keeps seeing she feels she's inadequate, feels insecure. And a lot of people were saying, like, out of all those scenes in the movie, the body horror and all the other stuff, like, that was the most affecting scene. And it was emotionally affecting. And a lot of women commenting online is like, yeah, I've been in that exact same situation of, not feeling that you're good enough, or not feeling that you're up to this certain standard. Even as a man, though, I think there's something underlying that speaks to all the audience members, of that idea of that sense of like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not living up to this standard or that expectation. And you begin to internalize that, and you begin to kind of amplify your own insecurities. And you see, in the end, is like, the people who care most about your insecurities are you, right? You're always so concerned about other people's perceptions. And that's the danger of it. You internalize that, and then you become kind of your own worst critic. I think The Substance was in conversation with another movie this year that didn't get a lot of play, even though it was great. Almost made my list, actually. A Different Man. I don't know if you've seen this yet. Again, this was from a more male perspective, but dealing with a lot of this, I think that a lot of the themes were similar in terms of, dealing with those kind of insecurities in terms of your own kind of body image and outward perceptions of, how other people are reacting to you. But very, very poignant movie, like incredibly depth and rich thematically, but then it works also as a horror movie, a body horror movie. And it works almost, there's darkly comedic elements, especially near the end when things go really awry, and it's like, this is, simultaneously it's disgusting and it's horrific, but also darkly comedic. Again, I don't want to spoil anything for people, but like, this movie kind of has it all. It's, if you're into the body horror kind of thing, and like, yeah, like there are some scenes in there where I was like, I didn't quite close my eyes, but I was just like doing like, oh my God, why am I watching this? Why am I subjecting myself to this? It's like, it's like one of those things, like horror movies, like part of it's like a test of your grit. Yeah. And if you want your grit tested, even in this day and age, when you think you've seen everything and you think like, oh, you're desensitized, watch The Substance and be like, no. There are still boundaries left to kind of cross here. Yeah.
That's right. Incredible.
Yeah. Great movie. So number 2 for me, The Substance.
Yeah. We're going to do something a little different this year. We're going to talk about our honorable mentions for the list before we jump into our number 1. I am still curious what Nathan's number 1. We didn't share our list with each other beforehand, so this is all quite raw. Honorable mentions. Do you want to go first, or you want me to reveal mine?
Oh, I can go if you want. Some that didn't quite make my list, but were really great movies. Anora, getting a lot of buzz for Oscars. It's getting a Criterion release, I think, right away. Great movie. didn't quite make my list, but definitely worth checking. It was one of those ones where I was like, okay, I was almost. I understand why it's getting the Oscar buzz and the awards buzz and everything. It is really good. And then again, it's kind of like a dark. It wasn't what I expected going in. It was a more of a kind of a dark comedy. It was actually ended up being quite touching, especially near the end. It was pretty heartbreaking. I would say heartbreaking, but like pretty emotionally affecting, I guess. The final scene after all like the crazy stuff going on, and then to see those characters kind of in intimate setting, and it's like, oh yeah, you realize kind of it puts into context some other things that were happening in the movie. So great little movie. Gladiator 2 didn't quite make my list, but again, I was I was so torn about putting that on there because it was such a great movie, and I love the original movie, and it just blew me out of the water how great it turned out. Trap wasn't super. I wasn't super high on the list, but I love M. Night Shyamalan stuff, and I just love it was something different, something unique, and to see Josh Hartnett kind of fully kind of back in action. Not my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie, but I wanted to give a shout out to Trap. Again, not the best movie out there, but I had a lot of fun with it. The Beekeeper, and keeping with the action vein. I don't know if it was ever seriously going to be on my top 10 list, but honorable mention is like, for all the flack maybe Jason Statham gets, maybe Jason Statham doesn't get this flack because it seems like he's very kind of self-aware and he knows the kind of movies he's doing, and he goes into it. And The Beekeeper was just kind of silly action fun. It was a definition of a popcorn movie. You want a popcorn action flick? The film knew exactly what it was. All the actors knew what movie, the kind of movie they were in, and it was just a ton of fun. Oh man, one that it was really hard to cut with Civil War.
Okay.
I was looking for, like, this is the thing, right? It always gets me. I always think, go through the years, like, I don't know, I'm going to put my top 10. Nothing's really good at standing out. I'm always down to the wire. It's like I'm having to cut stuff and decide. It's like Civil War by Alex Garland. I mean, I love all his movies. This is probably, again, I think I rated it 4 stars, but it's my least favorite of his movies. But it's still a 4-star movie, right? So
yeah,
it's a really great movie. Definitely check it out. And then A Different Man, I just mentioned, kind of flew under the radar. Really wish this got more play. It's a perfect double pairing if you want to watch The Substance and then A Different Man. Great kind of double feature in terms of very similar themes in very different ways. But again, there's some dark comedy in both as well as kind of the I don't know if it's body horror in A Different Man, but very very similar kind of in themes. And then another one, I feel bad now because in talking about it with you, it was on your list, and it is a great movie. Furiosa. Mad Max Saga didn't quite make the list.
With every entry here, I'm just like, what is his number one gonna be now? I love this format.
Right? I'm just like, I had it rated a 4, but I think hearing you talk, I'm like, I'm going back and watching. This one ended up a 4.5 for me. So like, it was tough to cut that one. That one, Furiosa, I think out of all of them, that one kind of hurt the most. Because it was on my list for a bit and I had to cut it. Those are some other honorable mentions that didn't quite make the top 10. But how about you, Brian?
Ooh.
Honorable mentions from your top 10 that didn't quite make the cut, or just
actually,
unique films that you just want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I actually have quite a few. I won't go into a lot of detail.
Here's another hour of just Brian's list.
It's one of those things where my list is like, all right, 4 stars and above, you have a good chance of making it in top 10. There's a few 4-star movies, but there's a couple key 3.5-star movies which I think are climbing the scale even more. And I've had a couple of movies that came out limited release in 2023 that I neglected to put on my 2024 list. I'm not sure if they would have made it into the top 10, but some of them are really close. These are all like the last few spots in the top 10 were battles with these movies. And one of which is Strange Darling. If you haven't seen it, you got to check it out. I mean, I love how the movie like plays with its narrative structure. And it was really engaging. Mars Express, another animated movie from France. kind of the cyberpunk genre.
Oh,
I love
that's
this.
high
stuff.
on my
It
list.
was
I didn't
great.
get a chance to check it out. You told
Yeah.
me about this. I completely blanked on this. I'm kicking myself.
Yeah,
I gotta watch
as well
this.
you should. As well. I mentioned Inside Out 2. I mean, I just really like the Inside Out movies. They're great. Cuckoo, it was
Yes,
a great
yes.
film. And Nora, I watched. I was almost kind of like, didn't expect that it was more like comedy. And it had like this certain humor that I wasn't,
Yeah.
like my gears weren't like aligned properly to process it. By the end of the movie, and be like, was that movie really good? Or am I like being crazy? Because like,
Yeah, I didn't realize I thought it was gonna be like more of a drama, and when it turned out
Yeah.
to be like a dark comedy, especially when the Russian kind of gangsters showed up.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, it did take me a bit to switch gears. Maybe that's why I didn't quite make it was like, yeah, I wasn't sure. I didn't realize watching a black comedy or a dark comedy until like half an hour in. I was like, okay, it was really good, but yeah, it was a tonal shift. It felt like almost, or a genre shift.
and I don't want to catch any flack for this. And I want to say this list is in no particular order. It's not like these are all like
Yeah,
number
was
11s or
mine.
something. Transformers 1. Okay. Anime movie. I was not expecting this to be good. I threw it on. I was just like, all right, let's see what they're cooking up this time. Best Transformers movie in quite a while. I love Bumblebee as well. It was just a lot of fun. It was great. It was
Nice.
I'm not going to apologize for loving it. Long Legs, for sure. You mentioned that's in your top 10.
There you
That
go.
one I had difficulty really appreciating initially. I think I'm going to be rewatching it. It'll climb the rankings. More animated madness. Watchmen parts 1 and 2, which came out, I think, just on like streaming, HBO.
I'm surprised they weren't on your top 10. I was waiting for them to show up on your top 10 list, actually. After you mentioned them multiple times throughout the year. So I was like, okay, he really
Yeah.
loves these movies.
Yeah. You know what? Honestly, when it comes to like the top 10, you're like, man, like Flow, if it's going to take the animated spot, maybe I should be putting more anime movies in the top 10. I don't know. It was a tight battle, honestly. It was a very tough battle for the top 10. Rebel Ridge, you talked about, really great movie, very surprising. Took me. Love Lies Bleeding, really solid
Okay.
film.
On my shelf, actually.
A more recent movie called Caddo Lake, which I think might be a bit of a hot take because I watched this with friends. We really enjoyed it. There's like this really neat sci-fi element carried through the movie. Again, this is my theme for this year, it seems. People weren't buying it, I guess. It did not do well critically, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really solid. And the last movie I'll mention is In Flames, a Pakistan movie, horror film that I ended up catching in my local film festival from last year. And I don't
nice.
think it even got a wide release in 2024. As far as I could see, all the releases were just like film festivals for the past 2 years. I was really into it, but I look forward to seeing this again, and I hope more people are able to check this film out. But yeah, those were all, I mean, that rounds out like the top 20, I guess.
Pretty much, yeah.
And now we need that drum roll for number 1,
Insert drum roll here.
right? For myself, number
All
1
right.
is
What is your number one movie of 2024? I'm really curious. I thought for sure Nosferatu was going to top out this list because you have been talking about it. All of our conversations recently have been like, "Go, do you see Nosferatu yet? Do you see Nosferatu? Do you see when are you going to see Nosferatu?" So like, I like when it came like. Now I'm really curious. Like, what is going on here? Is that if it's not Nosferatu, I don't know.
Well, I had to
I'm
keep
stumped.
mentioning it, so you make sure to watch it before we have this episode because it should be in your top 3 or 5 as well. No, number 1 for me is Civil War. Alex Garland.
Ah, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'm an Alex
Makes
Garland fanboy, and honestly, I was kind of nervous thinking, well, this isn't really a sci-fi film. It's like an alternate, I don't want to say alternate history because it's more like an alternate future.
Yeah.
Maybe might be too much of like what could possibly happen.
a
But
little bit too close to home.
yeah. But man, I thought he knocked it out of the park. I love this movie. I watched it in theater, loved it. And then I think you came visited me a couple weeks later. We went to the theater, watched again. Second viewing was just as good for me. And then, yeah, I mean, I got to watch this a whole bunch. It was a day one purchase on disc. It was just great. I love that it really just followed. It was the story of the photojournalists. And it wasn't necessarily about the Civil War itself, right? It was like their journey. It was Kirsten Dunst, and it was like these people following their passion of like putting themselves in danger. And I could imagine like the parallels to real war photojournalism and journalism in general, of like people going out and putting themselves in there to bring back these stories of like mainly the atrocities that are going on in these battles, and like how real it can be on the ground. The fact that it's like there in America, I mean, we're Canadian, very similar social structures where it's like you can pick those places and say, oh, that easily to put them in our own areas, right? Like it really hits
Yeah.
a little bit different when you see it like that. I thought that I made a note here where in the trailers for it, there was that Jesse Plemons scene that was kind of like played up where it was like, what type of American are you, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was going to be spoiled for me in the movie, but it wasn't. It's like it enhanced the scene where I was so invested in the characters by that point when that scene's on, and like the tension that's in there. Oh my God. Like it was just a memorable movie scene, like top movie scene of all time. Like it was fantastic. The other actors, Wagner Moura, Kaylee Spaney, who is also in Alien Romulus, the lead there as well. So that's two movies Kaylee is in my top 4 of all things.
There you go.
Stephen McKinley Henderson. I mean, the actors are doing great. The movie is shot beautifully. It looks fantastic. Like, it was just wild. And I mean, in terms of like checking that box for making it rewatchable, like this could be an annual rewatch for me for sure. It was just, I look forward to it every time I think about going to watch it. It was just really great. I don't know what else to say about it. Did we do an episode on it? I don't recall.
Oh yeah, we did.
Yeah. Go listen to that. Maybe I should go listen to that.
Yeah, apparently. No, it was a great movie. I did not expect it to be more about the ethics of photojournalism in wartime, as opposed to like the actual kind of social breakdown or the breakdown in social order and social, I guess.
Yeah, like what are the events that occurred, right? I think most people want that, but it's like, oh, that's almost like too higher picture, like big level.
I think it would be too, given the current state of affairs globally, that would have been too kind of maybe incendiary, maybe unnecessarily so.
Yeah.
It was created as a backdrop to explore, the kind of ethical responsibilities, and then the kind of the psychological toll that this takes on the psychological and physical toll it takes on people who, especially these people who believe in kind of what they're doing, like Kirsten Dunst's little speech there about, we always thought the reason we were covering this and sending these pictures back was as a warning, and people would heed that warning so it wouldn't happen here. Yeah. Right. That's something so poignant. It's like, okay, that's a vocation, I think, that you kind of have to believe in what you're doing. Maybe a bit more than, an office job where you're just kind of going in, punching the clock and doing your work. It's like you kind of have to have the courage of your convictions to do a job like that. But it does there's a psychological toll. There's a PTSD. There's that kind of ethical crossing of like, you're taking pictures of bad things that are happening. Do you have an ethical obligation trying to stop those bad things from happening that you're trying to document, or is it just you document them and that's your job, and the toll that takes on people. And then, like it was a somber examination of all these things. And what are you willing to do to get the shots? It's always, how obsessive are you? What are you willing to sacrifice to get that perfect shot? Who are you willing to kind of step over? And do the ends justify the means, right? If you get the perfect shot and it emotionally affects somebody and it affects change, is it worth, stepping over your dead friend to get the picture, right? It's like all these ethical examinations, which, you watch his movies and like, yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. But yeah, great pick. Like I said, it was hard to cut that one from my top 10.
I'm reeling after this fact that it's not in your top 10. It was in an honorable mention. I was like, wow.
It was on my top 10 list for a long time. It only got cut like literally within the past couple of days. It got cut, and I'm feeling bad for it.
No, you just say it's number 11. I'll be happy with that. That's fine.
Perfect. Number 11. I would happy to put it at number 11. Perfect.
All right. The big reveal. I gotta know, what is your number 1 movie of 2024?
I figured you would have guessed. I would have thought our top one would have been the same. It's one that you already mentioned, but I'm gonna have to go with Dune Part 2 as my It's my number. You don't sound surprised at all, which I kind of figured.
I figured Dune was going to be in there. It wasn't in honorable mentions. Yeah. I mean, for the longest time, Dune Part 2 was, because I rated 5 stars, it was sitting at the very, very top of the entire time.
Yeah. And it was, like you said, so far was the only first time watch this year from 2024 movies that I rated it at 5 out of 5. The closest everything else came was like a 4.5 or a 4 plus the like on Letterboxd. So Dune Part 2 really felt like, I think it's almost a rating for Dune and Dune Part 2 together, almost Dune Part 1 and 2, because it feels like a complete movie, like you were saying. But to take, I'm a relatively new convert to the Duneverse. I only started reading the books once I heard that Denis Villeneuve was making Dune movie, and so that really that was the catalyst. Dune has been on my reading list for a while, but the first Dune movie, Denis Villeneuve was a favorite filmmaker. That was really the catalyst. It's like, okay, I gotta read these books now, and I went into them and started reading them all. Kind of blew my mind when I started reading them. Just in terms of not even the sci-fi stuff that was happening, but just like the talks about politics, the examinations of politics and religions and power, and just all these different kind of philosophical questions and answers, going down these rabbit holes. And those novels are all so incredibly dense, but they sucked me in, and I was really curious then, how are they going to interpret this on film? And yeah, it absolutely blew my mind. You talk about epic filmmaking. Dune Part 1 and 2 is up there. Dune Part 2 is up there for sure. That's really the epic part of, Dune Part 1 was good. I think again, it was suffered from, maybe I'm being too hard on movies like that, where like Across the Spider-Verse or Dune Part 1, where, they were 5-star films in all ways, except for they felt like they were lacking an ending, right?
Yeah.
But Dune Part 2 comes in, and yeah, like the performances, like Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Austin Butler, who I haven't really seen a whole lot. I haven't seen the Elvis movie yet. I haven't seen him in a lot of stuff. He blew me away. Of course, Stellan Skarsgård in there. And then the rest of Hollywood, because it's one of those movies where, yeah, if you're in Hollywood, you're just gonna be in this movie, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like Oppenheimer last year is like, yeah, just who should we cast? Everyone. What do you mean everyone? Everyone. But yeah, I mean, it was, I don't know how you can top that kind of adaptation of that book to screen. You look at some of the changes Denis Villeneuve made, and it made the movie, it only made the narrative even better. It made the characters better. Like Chani in the book really felt like she was there to kind of service Paul's story. And in this movie, both Dune movies, felt like she had a life of her own, motivations of her own. She felt like an actual person instead of just somebody who's there to kind of further Paul's story. But all the changes that were made in order to translate it, it's a big budget, $100 million Hollywood movie, epic sci-fi adventure with that kind of indie, intimate filmmaking spirit of somebody who was passionate about, they had a story that they wanted to tell. Denis Villeneuve had a story that he wanted to tell, that he was passionate about, that he wanted to share with other people. Those philosophical examinations of the nature of power, and also the pure spectacle. When you talk about cinema, seeing something like this on the big screen, and it's just like you feel immersed in that world. Especially that there was scenes like that fight scene in the arena on the Harkonnens' home planet. There, I'm drawing a blank on the name. I've lost my my Dune credit already, my street credit already. Gady Prime. Okay, and then it was all kind of in black and white because of it was a different sun, right? It wasn't the yellow sun. It was like a white dwarf or something. Like stylistic choices like that just like, oh my God, just everything in there was just, firing on all cylinders. The performances, the writing, the cinematography, everything in there was just, it's a world you get lost in. It's not a fun world. It's a brutal world. Incredibly, you wouldn't want to live there, obviously, of all the fantasy worlds, but you talk about being drawn in, and you talk about the power of cinema, and you talk about, like, what I love about Christopher Nolan is, he tells these big budget, epic blockbuster movies, but he's got something to say, right? there's always some kind of core theme or themes that he's exploring, and he's got that kind of indie filmmaker spirit still from back in the day of making, the Following or Memento. And I think Denis Villeneuve is in that same vein, right? Where it's like, for a lot of people, the blockbuster format is kind of this bombastic, just fun popcorn movie with a bunch of special effects shown on screen. It's like, no, you can tell actual, real, engaging stories in the blockbuster genre and still have it be these epic action sequences, but there's depth to it. There's thematic depth to it. It has something to say. I think that's something that's kind of unique and special. Only a couple of filmmakers today are able to do that, and Denis Villeneuve is one of them. So yeah, Dune Part 2 is one of those movies, like you say, it's on my shelf. I'm going to rewatch those movies many a time. Absolutely phenomenal. Still blown away. Yeah.
Without a doubt. Incredible. This is why Dune, the movies are a reason. They're why we go out to the movies, right? It's just
exactly. Couldn't have said it better. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, that seems like a pretty good top 10 for both of us. I don't feel like there was as much crossover as there has been in past years.
I was kind of surprised, pleasantly so, because I always like to hear like other people's top 10s, like your top 10s. There's always a couple movies because you're always a little bit ahead of me, and just to hear is like, oh yeah, I'm putting these movies down on my list now so that I can go out and watch them. So I always have fun doing this because there's always some stuff that you pull out and is like, I've never heard of or haven't gotten around to watching yet. So
it's one of those things where you almost have to revisit the top 10 like a year later.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
you finally get an opportunity to watch all the movies you want to, especially late releases, like smaller films that get released later on, or we might those festival releases that are get a wide release now might be just included in like the 2025 list regardless type of thing. But man, there we are. Incredible.